ago.
You made an interesting comment, Ron. You said people are not afraid of bread lines. They're not concerned about soup lines or bread lines, whereas 6 months ago there was almost this depression sort of mentality. You think that's turned around?
I think that consumer confidence is back to the point where people are confident in their lifestyle and they're not panicking. I think there's no panic now.
Okay, 6 months ago we asked you, Ron, what if you had capital to invest? What would you do? And this is what you said.
I think there's a lot of opportunities in franchising, for example, where you could do a secondary or tertiary at-home type business where there's a system out there that you could
System in place.
for you to just kind of follow their lead and get a good franchise and create some more income for you and your family.
Has there been in that 6 month time a higher interest in the franchising sector?
There's a much higher interest in franchising. Unfortunately, the capital markets have not treated small business the way that small business should have been treated, and the access to capital has been the barrier for people to buy and start new businesses.
Your most controversial presidents, Ron, Richard Nixon said, as small business goes, so goes the economy. Now, you said to me 6 months ago that small business was really getting short-circuited by the U.S. government in terms of the SBA loans. They were paralyzed. What's happened since that time?
Unfortunately, not a whole lot's happened, Larry. CIT, the largest lender to small business in the country, larger than any of the bailed-out lending institutions, is on the brink of bankruptcy. It looks like they may have staved it off, but they are the largest lender in the apparel industry, small business, automotive aftermarket, and they will end up, in my opinion, being a much more conservative lender by not being bailed out by the government.
All right, so they weren't bailed out. Is the SBA starting to give money?
The SBA doesn't give money. The banks give the money, and the SBA
So
guarantees
it's the banks give the
loans.
money to the SBA,
The SBA guarantees the loans.
and they don't have any money.
Well, the banks have plenty of money. They're choosing not to lend it in a recessionary economy, which is probably a good banking practice. The other issue is that the credit that's been taken out of small business by virtue of Advana credit cards, basically closing up shop, took $5 billion of credit out of the small business economy. And what we put back in with these ARC loans that the government came up with is only $350 million.
So you help businesses try to develop, right? That's what your company does?
Yes.
Okay. Where are you getting the resources to help, or where are you going to get the money? I mean, let's say somebody wants to buy a Dunkin' Donuts, or somebody wants to start a new kind of clothing store, or somebody wants to develop a car wash. Mm-hmm. These are small businesses. How do they get the money?
It's much more challenging now than it's ever been. If you're going into a franchise business where the franchisor has a good track record and an established brand, it's much less difficult to get the capital, especially if you have experience within that industry. If you're trying to start a business from scratch, no bank that I know of is going to lend you any money unless you've got a track record within that industry and you've worked for a company and now you're branching out.
Even if the economy opens up and starts expanding rather than contracting?
In the old days, in the good old days, which, yes, it was too loose, Jim. It was clearly, the market was too loose in the last 4 or 5 years before the crash. It was still hard for an independent person who wanted to start a business to borrow any money because there's no track record of a system in place.
What would you say to people watching the program who are interested in starting their own business? They can't get a loan, so they're going to have to borrow or save their own money to do it. What do they do if they can't get that loan? Is there a way, are there creative ways to fashion their businesses together?
There's actually networks now of peer-to-peer lending on the internet where you're just borrowing from private citizens. Friends and family, obviously, putting a bunch of people together and creating an investment group that backs one person. There's many business organizations that do that for small business people.
Sort of like an investment club, except this time you're pooling all your money to back one person in their business.
Absolutely.
Does it work?
It's worked. In Philadelphia, there's the Korean American Business Persons Association that's been doing it for 20 years.
I'm very familiar with them, and they're very successful.
Absolutely.
And Ron Feldman, we thank you for standing up for small business. You can write to